She's 25 years old. She has a 4-month-old son, and she's telling anyone who will listen. The father of her baby, one of the most famous men in Brazil, has threatened to kill her. Nobody stops it. A few months later, she gets into a car to go settle things with him. Face to face, she brings the baby. She is never seen alive again. And in packed stadiums across the country, people are still chanting his name. I'm Cole. And this is Midnight Files. To understand how this ends, you have to understand how high he climbed. His name is Bruno Fernandes de Souza. In Brazil, nobody uses all of that. They just call him Goleiro Bruno, goalkeeper Bruno. He starts small, Atlético Mineiro, then Corinthians, where he can't crack the first team. And then, in 2007, he lands at Flamengo, one of the biggest, richest, most worshipped clubs in all of South America. A club with the largest fan base in the country. At first, he's just the backup. But when the starting keeper goes down injured, Bruno gets his shot. And he takes it. He's electric. He makes penalty saves that win cups. And he does something goalkeepers almost never do. He scores. Free kicks, penalties, goals from his own end of the field that send the whole stadium into chaos. The fans fall in love. The club makes him captain. And the whispers start. This kid could be Brazil's goalkeeper at the 2014 World Cup. On home soil. He has everything. The fame, the money, the adoration of an entire nation. And that is the man at the center of this story. Now meet Eliza. Eliza Samudio is born in 1985 in a small town called Foz do Iguaçu. Her childhood is hard. Her home is violent. Her father beats her mother until her mother finally runs. Eliza grows up passed between parents, learning early that the people who are supposed to protect you sometimes don't. But she has a dream. Since she was 13 years old, she's wanted one thing: to leave that small town and become a model in the big city. At 18, she does it. She moves to Sao Paulo with almost nothing. No connections, no safety net. The modeling dream doesn't pay the bills, so Eliza does what she has to do to survive. She takes any work she can find. She poses. She acts. She keeps her head above water, chasing the same dream year after year. And then she meets him. It's around 2008-2009. A party. A barbecue in Rio. The famous goalkeeper and the young model. They start seeing each other, even though Bruno is married. Even though, that same year, he gets engaged to another woman entirely, a dentist. Eliza is the secret, the one on the side. And then the secret becomes a problem. Eliza gets pregnant. For Bruno, this is a threat. A child means a paternity test. A paternity test means child support. A permanent, public claim on the life of a very rich, very famous man. So he wants it gone. He tells her to end the pregnancy. She refuses. And this is where a bad situation turns into a nightmare. In October of 2009, Eliza walks into a police station and tells them something almost impossible to believe. She says Bruno and 2 of his associates held her prisoner. She says they forced her to swallow substances meant to end the pregnancy, at gunpoint. She says Bruno put a gun to her own head. She's asking for one thing: protection, a restraining order. Keep this man 300 meters away from me. And the system fails her completely. A judge denies the protective order. The reasoning? That the law didn't technically apply, because Eliza and Bruno didn't have a stable relationship. On paper, they weren't a real couple. So, on paper, she didn't qualify to be protected. And there was proof. A test of Eliza's urine confirmed exactly what she'd said. The abortive substances were there. She was telling the truth. But that test sat in a lab for more than 8 months before anyone processed it. 8 months. By the time the result came back, it was already too late to matter. Bruno, meanwhile, tells the public she's lying. He brushes the whole thing off, says it's not the first time she's made up stories to hurt him. Just a woman with a fantasy and a grudge. That's his story. And because of who he is, a lot of people believe him. On February 10, 2010, Eliza gives birth to a baby boy. She names him Bruninho, little Bruno. And now she does the thing Bruno feared most. She files a paternity claim. She starts demanding child support. She wants her son to have what he's owed by his father. She has no idea that by fighting for a baby, she has just signed her own death sentence. June 4th, 2010. A car pulls up outside Eliza's hotel in Rio de Janeiro. Behind the wheel is a man named Luis Henrique. Everyone calls him Macaro. He's Bruno's closest friend, his right hand, and he's come with a message that sounds, finally, like peace. Come with me. We're going to sit down and settle this. Money for the baby, all of it. Eliza wants to believe it. She still holds out hope she can work things out with him. So she gets in the car with her 4-month-old son. But they don't drive to a lawyer. They don't drive to a meeting. They drive for hours, roughly 450 kilometers, all the way to a remote farm in Esmeraldas, in the state of Minas Gerais. Bruno's property, isolated, far from anyone who knows her. The gate closes behind her, and she is held there, against her will, for about 6 days. Bruno comes and goes. He's still playing for Flamengo, still living his public life, while the woman carrying his son sits trapped on his farm. June 10th, 2010. This is the last day anyone can prove Eliza Samudio was alive. According to the testimony that would later come out, she's taken from that farm to a house in the Belo Horizonte area, and waiting there is a man named Marcos Aparecido dos Santos. On the street, they call him Bola. He's a former police officer, turned killer for hire. What happens in that house is the part of this story that made an entire nation sick. Eliza is strangled to death. And then, to make sure she can never be found, to erase her from the face of the earth, her body is dismembered. Her remains are fed to dogs, Rottweilers. Her body has never been recovered, to this day. But her son survives. The baby is spared, and later abandoned in a favela, left behind like he was nothing. And that single decision, to let the child live, is what starts to unravel everything. Because the baby is found, alive. And investigators start asking the obvious question, where is his mother? On June 26th, police officially name Bruno a suspect in Eliza's disappearance. The golden goalkeeper, the captain, the national idol. And then the case cracks wide open from the inside. At Bruno's own residence, police find his 17-year-old cousin, a kid named Jorge Luis Rosa Sales. And under questioning, this teenager breaks. He tells them everything. He admits he was there. He admits he struck Eliza with the butt of a gun. And then he describes the rest, the strangling, the dismemberment, the dogs. A national police investigator repeats it to reporters in flat, clinical language. They tied her hands. This man strangled her. Then they took her apart. Bruno's own former lawyer says the goalkeeper is astonished, scared, that he has no idea what his cousin is even talking about. On July 7th, Bruno and Macarao surrender to police. Bola is arrested the next day. And Bruno's story? He didn't do it. He didn't order anything. Sure, he admits he found out afterward that Eliza had been killed, strangled, her remains fed to dogs, but he says he only heard about it from a friend, that he had nothing to do with it. Flamengo doesn't wait. They suspend him, drop their legal support, and then fire him outright. And in October of 2010, the DNA results finally come back. Bruno is the father. The paternity Eliza spent her last months fighting to prove, the thing she was killed to bury, is confirmed. She was right the whole time. She just didn't live to hear it. Now the case drags toward trial, and the body count isn't finished. In August of 2012, before he can testify at the main trial, another one of Bruno's cousins, a man named Sergio Rosa Sales, a witness against him, is chased down by 2 men on a motorcycle. He tries to hide inside a house. They find him anyway. 6 shots. He's dead. Whether it was tied to this case has never been proven, but the timing left a lot of people cold. The trial finally arrives, and the details are so grotesque that at one point Bruno's defense mocks them openly. One lawyer sneering to reporters, asking if the Rottweilers were going to be charged too. One by one, the verdicts come down. Macareo, the best friend, the man who drove her to the farm, 15 years. Another of Bruno's ex-girlfriends, tied to the plot, 5 years. And then, on March 8, 2013, the man at the center of it all. Bruno Fernandes de Souza is found guilty of ordering the murder of Eliza Samudio, guilty of hiding her body, guilty of kidnapping his own infant son. 22 years in prison. To the very end, he insists he never gave the order. Bola, the man who strangled her, ends up with decades behind bars, later tied to other killings entirely. And that should be where the story ends. Justice. A monster locked away for 22 years. But this is where it gets almost impossible to stomach. In February of 2017, after serving only a fraction of his sentence, Bruno walks out of prison. Not pardoned, not innocent. Released on a technicality, because the courts were taking too long to rule on his appeal. And within weeks, a professional soccer club signs him. The convicted killer straps the gloves back on. Sponsors flee in disgust. But in the stands, fans chant his name. They take pictures with him. They cheer. He's ordered back to prison a short time later. But that's not the end of it either. Over the following years, he works the system, softer regimes, day releases, conditional freedom. And club after club, small ones, desperate for attention, keeps handing him a contract. Today, Bruno Fernandes de Souza is in his 40s. He is a free man, and he is still, somehow, playing professional soccer in Brazil. Eliza Samudio's body has still never been found. But there is one more person in this story. The reason all of it happened. The baby. Bruninho. He grew up far from all of it, raised by his grandmother, Eliza's mother, in a different corner of Brazil. The little boy who was left in a favela made it. And here's the part that will stay with you. Bruninho grew up and became a goalkeeper, the exact same position his father played, the position that made his father a national idol before it made him a killer. He's good, too. Signed by a major Brazilian club, called up to his country's youth national team. In one match against Argentina, he saved a penalty, the kind of moment that once made his father famous. And in 2026, this young man does something almost unimaginable. He agrees to sit down, face to face, with his father. Not for a hug, not for forgiveness. He goes to ask him one question, the only question that has never been answered in 16 years. Where is my mother's body? So that maybe, finally, she can be found, and buried, and given the peace that everyone in this story, from a broken justice system to a stadium full of cheering fans, refused to give her while she was alive. She was 25. She had a dream, and a son, and a truth that nobody would listen to until it was too late. Her name was Eliza Samudio. And she is still out there, somewhere, waiting to be found.